The most dangerous person in the room is rarely the loudest. It is not the person who threatens you. It is not the person who insults you. It is not even the person who openly declares themselves your enemy. The most dangerous person is the one who understands what others are trying to do before they realize they have revealed it. Because every enemy gives away something. A pause that lasts too long, a question that seems innocent, a sudden change in tone, a compliment that feels slightly forced. A pattern of appearing whenever you begin to succeed. Most people do not lose because their enemies are smarter. They lose because they become emotional. They react too quickly. They reveal too much. They defend themselves before they understand the attack. And the moment you become predictable, you become easy to control. Your enemy does not need to destroy you if they can make you destroy your own position. They only need to provoke you, make you explain yourself, make you rush, make you reveal what you fear, make you believe that every battle must be fought immediately. The person who controls the pace of the conflict often controls the outcome. So if you want to outplay your enemies mentally, you must learn something most people never learn. You do not defeat every enemy by attacking them. Sometimes you defeat them by letting them expose themselves. Sometimes you win by becoming impossible to read. Sometimes you win by giving them exactly what they expect until the moment they commit themselves to the wrong strategy. These are 7 ruthless psychological principles for dealing with enemies, rivals, manipulators, and anyone who believes they can control you. The first rule of outplaying your enemies mentally is simple. Never reveal your true emotional reaction. Most people believe that when someone attacks them, the attack itself is the important moment. It is not. The real battle begins the instant you react. Your enemy is watching not only what you say, but how quickly you say it, the expression on your face, the tension in your voice, the sudden need to defend yourself, and the intensity of your anger. Every reaction becomes information, and information in the hands of the right person becomes power. When someone insults you, they may not care about the insult. They may be testing your emotional boundaries. They want to know what makes you angry, what embarrasses you, what causes you to become defensive, and what makes you lose control. The moment you react exactly as they hoped, you have revealed a weakness. You have shown them the button, and now they know where to press it next time. This is why emotional control is not about having no emotions. It is about refusing to display every emotion the moment you experience it. You may feel anger, but you do not have to perform anger. You may feel insulted, but you do not have to immediately prove that you are not insulted. You may feel threatened, but you do not have to let the person who threatened you see fear in your eyes. There is a difference between experiencing an emotion and surrendering control to it. Imagine someone making a subtle comment designed to diminish you in front of others. The instinctive response is to defend yourself immediately. You explain your achievements. You correct the person. You prove that they are wrong. But in doing so, you may give them exactly what they wanted. They forced you to prove your worth on their terms. A calmer response creates uncertainty. A pause, a neutral expression, a simple question. Suddenly, the person who attacked you no longer knows whether they succeeded. Uncertainty is uncomfortable for people who depend on control. They want immediate feedback. They want to see anger, fear, desperation, or confusion. When you refuse to provide it, they lose their map of your inner world. They may begin talking more, explaining more, or escalating their behavior in an attempt to force a reaction. And every attempt gives you more information about their intentions. The person who can provoke you whenever they choose has a form of control over you. If someone can make you send an angry message, make you abandon your principles, make you reveal private information, or make you act before thinking, they do not need to defeat you directly. They can simply manipulate your reactions until you damage your own position. The disciplined person creates distance between feeling and action. They observe the emotion before obeying it. They ask themselves what the other person is trying to achieve. Is this an honest disagreement or a deliberate provocation? Is the accusation important or is it designed to distract? Is a response necessary or is silence more useful? This small pause can completely change the balance of power. You do not have to respond to every attack with immediate force. Sometimes the strongest response is to remain unreadable long enough for the other person to reveal more than they intended. When people cannot tell what you are thinking, they often begin imagining possibilities. They may become cautious. They may become nervous. They may expose their motives while trying to discover yours. Your emotions belong to you. They are signals, not commands. Anger can tell you that a boundary has been crossed, but it does not decide how you should respond. Fear can warn you of danger, but it does not have to dictate your behavior. Humiliation can reveal that someone has touched your ego, but it does not mean you must immediately fight to restore your image. The less predictable your emotional reactions become, the harder you are to manipulate. A person who always explodes can be controlled through provocation. A person who always explains can be controlled through accusation. A person who always chases can be controlled through withdrawal, but a person who pauses, observes, and chooses their response cannot easily be controlled by someone else's behavior. The second rule is to let your enemies underestimate you. Most people have an instinctive desire to prove themselves. When someone doubts their intelligence, their ability, their ambition, or their strength, they feel compelled to correct the misunderstanding immediately. They want to say, "You have no idea what I am capable of." But this desire to be recognized can become a weakness. The moment you reveal everything you can do, you give others the opportunity to prepare against you. Being underestimated is often more useful than being admired. When people believe they fully understand your abilities, they become cautious, they watch your movements, they calculate your intentions, they protect themselves from your strengths. But when they believe you are less capable than you really are, they relax, they become careless, they speak more freely, they take risks they would never take against someone they consider dangerous. This is why you should not always correct people's assumptions about you. If someone believes you are inexperienced, you do not need to rush to list everything you have accomplished. If someone believes you are not ambitious, you do not need to announce your plans. If someone thinks you are quieter because you lack confidence, you do not need to prove your confidence through unnecessary displays. Let people form their conclusions while you quietly observe what those conclusions cause them to do. The person who is underestimated often receives access to information that the respected person does not. People reveal more when they feel superior. They explain their thinking. They reveal their plans. They discuss weaknesses because they do not believe anyone is listening carefully enough to use the information. They may even attempt to teach you, believing that you are beneath them. While they are enjoying the feeling of superiority, you are learning how they think. Your ego will constantly demand recognition. It will tell you to correct every misunderstanding and prove every doubter wrong. But the need to prove yourself can force you to reveal your resources too early. A person who knows you are capable will guard themselves. A person who believes you are harmless may expose themselves completely. This does not mean pretending to be foolish or allowing people to disrespect you without limits. The goal is not to become invisible. The goal is to avoid displaying your full capacity unnecessarily. There is a difference between weakness and restraint. A weak person cannot act. A restrained person chooses when to act. The first is powerless. The second is waiting. Think of your abilities as resources. You do not spend every resource simply because someone questions whether you possess it. You do not reveal your entire strategy simply because someone doubts your intelligence. You do not show every connection, every skill, every plan, or every advantage at the beginning of the game. The more you reveal, the more predictable you become. People often make the mistake of announcing their future before they've built it. They tell everyone what they are going to do, who they are going to become, and how successful they will be. This gives them the temporary satisfaction of being seen as powerful, but it also gives others information about their direction. Quiet progress is harder to interfere with. A plan that remains hidden cannot be easily attacked. There is also psychological power in allowing someone to become confident in their superiority. When a person believes they are smarter than you, they often become less careful. They may underestimate your questions. They may ignore your observations. They may reveal their strategy because they assume you are incapable of understanding it. Their confidence becomes a blind spot. The person who wants to outplay others mentally must learn to separate recognition from results. You do not need everyone to know what you are capable of. You only need to be capable when the moment arrives. Let your enemies judge the surface while you study the deeper structure. Let them believe they have already measured you while you continue developing beyond the limits they have imagined. The third rule is to never fight on the battlefield your enemy chooses. Every conflict has a frame, and the person who controls the frame often controls the direction of the entire battle. Your enemy may try to decide what the conflict is about, what you must defend, what you must explain, and what emotions you are expected to feel. If you accept their definition without questioning it, you may already be fighting from a position of weakness. Some people do not attack you directly. Instead, they create situations designed to make you react. They provoke you into arguments about small details while hiding the larger issue. They question your character so that you are forced to defend your personality instead of examining their behavior. They accuse you of being selfish for setting a boundary, arrogant for refusing to obey, or insecure for refusing to accept disrespect. The goal is not always to prove that they are right. The goal is to make you abandon your position and start defending yourself on ground they selected. This is why you must learn to recognize the battlefield before entering it. A person may challenge your intelligence when the real issue is their inability to control you. Someone may accuse you of being cold when you simply stop giving them unlimited access. A rival may turn your success into a debate about whether you deserve it because they cannot compete with the result itself. If you accept the argument exactly as it is presented, you may spend all your energy trying to prove something that was never the real issue. You are not required to answer every accusation the way it is presented. If someone says, "Why are you so insecure?" you do not have to begin proving your confidence. You can calmly ask, "What makes you think that?" If someone says, "Everyone thinks you are difficult," you do not have to defend yourself against an invisible crowd. You can ask who specifically. Vague accusations often become weaker when forced to become specific. The same principle applies to public conflict. An enemy may try to drag you into emotional exchanges where the loudest person appears to have the most power. They may interrupt you, exaggerate your words, or force you to respond to several accusations at once. If you follow their rhythm, they control the pace. Instead, slow the conversation down. Address only what matters. Refuse to chase every distraction. A person who throws 10 accusations at once may not be seeking truth. They may simply be trying to overwhelm your ability to think. The strongest response is sometimes to refuse the battle completely. Not every accusation accusation deserves a defense. Not every insult deserves a reply. Not every provocation deserves your attention. Your enemy may want you to spend hours proving your worth to someone who has already decided not to respect it. The moment you accept that responsibility, you place your value in their hands. A skilled strategist chooses where to invest energy. If the other person wants an emotional argument, give them calm questions. If they want you to explain your private decisions, give them boundaries. If they want to make you react publicly, give them composure. If they want to turn your success into a debate, continue moving forward. The goal is not to win every argument. The goal is to protect your position. Arguments can create the illusion of progress while leaving the real power structure unchanged. You may win every sentence and still lose your time, focus, reputation, and emotional control. The person who understands this stops measuring victory by how cleverly they responded and begins measuring it by whether the enemy succeeded in changing their direction. Your enemy may control the accusation, but they do not have to control the subject. They may create the noise, but they do not decide what deserves your attention. They may invite you into their frame, but you are not obligated to enter it. When you recognize the battlefield before the conflict begins, you become far more difficult to manipulate because you are no longer reacting to the game your opponent designed. The fourth rule is to use silence to make people reveal themselves. Most people are uncomfortable with silence because silence removes the distractions that normally protect them. When conversation stops, people are forced to confront the words they have already spoken and the reactions they are not receiving. This discomfort often causes them to speak more than they intended. They explain themselves, justify their behavior, add unnecessary details, and sometimes reveal the very information they were trying to hide. This is why silence can become a powerful psychological tool. When someone attacks you, the instinctive response is usually to defend yourself immediately. You want to explain your intentions, correct the misunderstanding, and prove that the other person is wrong. But immediate explanations often give the other person control over the conversation. They make the accusation and you are forced to respond. They create the pressure and you rush to relieve it. The more you speak under pressure, the more opportunities you give them to analyze your words. A calm pause changes the rhythm. Instead of reacting instantly, you allow the silence to remain. You look at the situation. You observe the person. You give yourself time to decide whether a response is even necessary. This simple delay can make the other person uncomfortable because they do not know what your silence means. Are you angry? Are you unconvinced? Are you thinking? Have they gone too far? The uncertainty forces them to interpret your behavior, and people often reveal themselves while trying to understand someone else. A person who is manipulating you may become increasingly talkative when you do not respond as expected. They may say, "Why are you so quiet?" They may start explaining their intentions without being asked. They may repeat the accusation in different words. They may become defensive. They may try to provoke you into giving them the emotional reaction they were looking for. Each attempt provides information about what they want from the situation. Silence is especially powerful when someone makes a vague accusation. Instead of immediately defending yourself, you can allow them to continue. Ask them to explain, then remain quiet. Many accusations sound powerful when they are vague, emotional, and surrounded by pressure. But when the person is forced to provide specific details, their argument may begin to weaken. The more they talk, the more contradictions can appear. There is also a difference between strategic silence and emotional punishment. Strategic silence is not about ignoring someone to create drama. It is not about refusing to communicate in situations where communication is necessary. It is the ability to avoid speaking simply because you feel pressured to fill the space. You are not trying to make the other person suffer. You are allowing the situation to reveal itself before you decide what to do. People often expose their intentions through what they say after they believe the conversation is over. A person who feels they are losing control may suddenly become more aggressive. Someone who knows they are being dishonest may begin adding unnecessary details. Someone who wants your approval may become desperate to make you respond positively. Someone who wants to provoke you may escalate their behavior when the first attempt fails. The person who speaks constantly is constantly giving away information. Their priorities, insecurities, assumptions, and motives appear through their words. The person who listens carefully can see patterns that the speaker does not realize they are revealing. This is why silence should not be viewed as weakness. A silent person may be doing more psychological work than the person speaking. You do not need to rush to prove that you are intelligent. You do not need to answer every insult immediately. You do not need to fill every uncomfortable pause. Sometimes the most revealing moment comes after you stop talking, when the other person realizes they are no longer controlling the conversation and begins speaking to regain the power they thought they had. The fifth rule is to make your moves unpredictable. Predictability is one of the easiest ways to become controlled. When people understand exactly how you will respond, they no longer need to fear your decisions. They can anticipate your anger, your forgiveness, your silence, your return, and your next move. Once they understand your pattern, they can begin manipulating the pattern itself. Every person develops habits of reaction. Some people always answer immediately. Some always defend themselves. Some always forgive. Some always chase after those who withdraw. Others become aggressive whenever they feel disrespected. These patterns may feel natural, but to an observant enemy, they become instructions. If someone knows exactly exactly what will make you react. They do not need to control your entire life. They only need to create the right situation. This is why you must sometimes break your own pattern. If you always respond instantly, slow down. If you always explain yourself, remain quiet. If you always forgive quickly, allow time to pass before restoring trust. If you always confront someone directly, consider whether distance would be more effective. The purpose is not to become confusing for the sake of confusion. The purpose is to prevent other people from treating your behavior like a predictable machine. A person who is constantly predictable becomes easy to provoke. Imagine someone who knows that whenever they ignore you, you will chase them. They do not need to value your attention because they already know they can regain control by withdrawing theirs. But when you stop responding according to the pattern, the entire strategy becomes weaker. The other person is forced to reconsider their assumptions. They may return, they may become more aggressive. They may pretend they never cared. Each response gives you new information because their original method no longer produces the expected result. Unpredictability does not mean becoming unstable or unreliable. There is a difference between being impossible to trust and being difficult to manipulate. Your principles should remain consistent, your values should remain clear, but your enemies should not always know how you will respond to every situation. They should know that you are capable of calmness, distance, confrontation, forgiveness, and complete withdrawal, but they should not know which one you will choose before the situation reveals itself. This creates psychological uncertainty. People become cautious when they cannot accurately predict consequences. A person who knows that every act of disrespect will receive the same response may continue testing the limit. But a person who understands that your response may change depending on the seriousness of their behavior must think more carefully. They can no longer rely on a familiar strategy. Your enemy wants to build a map of you. They want to know what you fear, what you tolerate, what you cannot resist, and how far they can push before you react. The more consistent your emotional patterns are, the easier this map becomes to create. The goal is not to hide your entire personality. It is to stop handing people a complete manual for controlling you. Sometimes the most powerful move is the one nobody expected. A person who expects anger receives calm. The person who expects an explanation receives silence. The person who expects you to chase them discovers that you are perfectly capable of continuing without them. The person who believes you will always remain available discovers that access to you is not automatic. When people cannot predict your reaction, they must become more careful with their actions. They can no longer depend on your old habits to protect them from consequences. You remain in control of your choices while they are forced to operate without certainty, and every attempt to understand your next move requires them to reveal more of their own intentions. The sixth rule is to let people experience the consequences of underestimating you. Many people make the mistake of warning others repeatedly. They explain what will happen if they are disrespected, betrayed, ignored, or taken for granted. They announce their boundaries again and again, hoping that the other person will finally understand. But when warnings are repeated without consequences, they lose their power. The other person learns that your words are emotional but not real. A boundary that is never enforced is only a request. You may say, "Do not speak to me that way," but if the behavior continues and nothing changes, the other person learns that they can continue. You may say, "If you betray my trust, things will be different," but if you immediately restore the same level of access, the message becomes meaningless. People pay attention to patterns, not promises. They study what you actually allow. This is why consequences are often more powerful than explanations. You do not need to deliver a dramatic speech every time someone crosses a line. You do not need to threaten revenge. You do not need to convince the person that they have made a mistake. You can simply change the level of access they have to you. If someone repeatedly wastes your time, you become less available. If someone repeatedly lies, you stop giving them sensitive information. If someone constantly undermines your efforts, you stop depending on their approval. If someone repeatedly disrespects your boundaries, you reduce their presence in your life. The change does not need to be announced with anger. It can simply become reality. Many people are comfortable with your boundaries as long as your boundaries do not cost them anything. They may agree with your words and still continue the same behavior because they have learned that nothing important will be lost. But when access begins to disappear, their calculation changes. Your time is no longer guaranteed. Your attention is no longer automatic. Your trust is no longer freely available. This is where many people misunderstand consequences. Consequences are not the same as revenge. Revenge keeps you emotionally connected to the person who harmed you. You continue thinking about them, planning against them, and trying to make them feel what you felt. Consequences are different. They are focused on protection. You're not trying to destroy the person. You are simply refusing to continue rewarding behavior that harms you. There is also a psychological lesson in allowing someone to underestimate you. Sometimes people believe your patience means weakness. They assume your kindness means you are incapable of firmness. They mistake your silence for permission. But when you finally change your behavior, they are forced to confront a version of you they did not expect. The most effective consequences are often quiet, because quiet decisions decisions are harder to argue with. If you announce every change, the other person may attempt to negotiate. They may promise to change. They may accuse you of being cruel. They may create another emotional conversation designed to return the relationship to its previous arrangement. But when your decision is already made, their reaction no longer determines the outcome. You do not have to prove that you are strong by constantly displaying anger. You do not have to threaten people to make them respect your limits. You only need to become consistent enough that your actions teach others what your words never could. When someone repeatedly shows you that they do not value your access, your trust, or your presence, you do not need to keep explaining their mistake, and the consequences begin the moment you stop giving them the same opportunity to repeat it. The seventh rule is to win by becoming impossible to destroy. This is the point where the entire game changes. Most people believe defeating an enemy means humiliating them, exposing them, or making them suffer, but the more powerful victory is to become so strong in your own direction that your enemy loses the ability to influence your life. You stop measuring your progress by their reaction. You stop making decisions based on their approval. You stop allowing their hatred to occupy the space that should belong to your purpose. Many people are defeated psychologically long before anything happens to them physically. They become obsessed with the person who opposes them. They wake up thinking about the enemy. They spend hours imagining conversations, planning revenge, studying every movement, and trying to predict what the other person will do next. Their enemy may not control their actions directly, but they have still gained control of their mind. Hatred can become another form of attachment when your thoughts remain permanently connected to the person you claim to have defeated. The strongest response is to build a life that does not depend on the enemy's approval, permission, cooperation, or destruction. Develop skills that cannot easily be taken from you. Strengthen your discipline. Improve your judgment. Build relationships based on trust rather than desperation. Create opportunities that do not depend on the people who want to limit you. The less you need from someone who wants power over you, the less power they possess. This is why personal growth can be more threatening to an enemy than direct confrontation. An argument gives them access to your emotions. Revenge gives them access to your attention. But growth removes access altogether. You become too focused on your future to remain trapped in their behavior. You no longer need to prove that they were wrong because your life begins to demonstrate the answer without explanation. There is a particular kind of power in becoming unrecognizable to the people who once understood how to control you. The person who once knew how to provoke your anger discovers that you no longer react. The person who once used silence to make you chase them discovers that you can continue without them. The person who once depended on your insecurity discovers that you have developed confidence that does not require their approval. Do not announce every transformation. Announcements invite resistance. People can prepare for a change they know is coming. Quiet transformation is different. You simply begin making different choices. You stop explaining every decision. You stop returning to the same destructive patterns. You stop offering unlimited access to people who repeatedly misuse it. Over time, the people around you are forced to confront the fact that the old version of you is no longer available. The goal is not to become cruel. It is to become difficult to destroy because your foundation is no longer built on the opinions of unstable people. You can be criticized without collapsing, rejected without begging, misunderstood without desperately explaining yourself, opposed without abandoning your direction. When your identity is built on something deeper than external approval, attacks lose much of their force. Your enemy may still speak about you. They may still attempt to provoke you. They may still try to pull you back into old patterns, but their power depends on your participation. If you refuse to give them your attention, they are left with their own actions. If you continue building while they continue watching, the difference between you becomes impossible to ignore. The ultimate victory is not making your enemy fear you. It is reaching a point where their ability to hurt you has become smaller than your ability to continue growing. Let them remember the version of you they once controlled while you become someone their old strategies can no longer reach. The strongest revenge is not destruction but transformation, and the final proof that you have won is the moment you realize you no longer need your enemy to lose in order for you to succeed.